chaps, so welcome to episode 21 of Nemcast. Now, in this particular episode, I'm interviewing Sam Leggett, who is the owner of Kingdom of Airsoft, another sort of fellow tech, and he runs Starlink at his workshop, so it's going to be an audio-only podcast because his internet just wasn't able to support the video side, which is fine. So stick your headphones on, get this quick advert out of the way, and enjoy the podcast. Cheers, chaps. Hey chaps, this is just a quick little ad break before we get back to the podcast. Now, this isn't even a paid advert, we're not sponsored, we're not affiliated with these guys financially in any way, but they have done our merch, and that's Invictus Morale. I was so impressed with the company's sort of work and how they liaised with us and how the whole process worked. I thought, you know what, it's well worth giving these guys a shout out. So they do all sorts of stuff from caps like the one I've got on, or this Tropic Multicam one. They do leather patches, they do normal patches, wallets, accessories, all sorts of custom bespoke things to suit you. So I really do advise you go and check out their website, which will be in the link in the description below, and I'll also just stick up their website here. So that being that, we'll get back to the podcast. Cheers chaps, speak to you soon. Hey chaps, welcome to episode 21 of Nemcast, and this is the audio version because we're now introducing Sam from Kingdom of Airsoft, and he has wank internet, so we're doing the audio version. So, Sam, nice to finally get you on the podcast, mate. How's things?
Yeah, nice to be here. Not too bad at all. A bit chilly up here in Scotland, but got my body warmer on.
Yeah, well, it's Scotland. You will choose to live in the middle of fucking nowhere. But anyway, I've been meaning to speak to you for a long time because obviously I'm a tech by trade, and you're, well known for being a tech. What got you into it?
I mean, I've always liked taking things apart, fiddling with things. If I see a screw, I'll take it out, see how things work, and of course, guns are cool. There was a little market where I was growing up in Wishaw, the south side of Glasgow, and they would sell, BB guns, little springers for a few quid. So I would go and buy one anytime I could scavenge a few pounds. Dad hated it, banned me from having them. So obviously I bought more and it kind of spiraled from there.
So when did you start actually playing airsoft then? Because obviously you get your first sort of cheap BB gun that sort of sparks the interest. But did you start paintballing first? Because that's sort of how we first started. We went paintballing, then my mate went, oh, there's this thing called airsoft. One thing led to another. What was your start? Because obviously in Scotland there isn't quite as many airsoft sites.
Yeah, there's not a huge number up here. I played paintball a few times first, but that was crazy expensive, and I think I was maybe 13 or 14 or something. Went paintball a few times, and that was great, but it's a big expense, so didn't do much for a few years. And then one of my mates bought in, him and his mate bought in some kind of Jingong M4s from China. We went playing out in the woods with them up on his farm, and we all decided that night that we were going to play airsoft. One of the guys decided he was going to start his own site, which he did, and we all we all spiraled from there.
All right. So, is that always been your local site? Is it still going now today? This site, or where is it?
Yeah, so that was 5 War Games. They are still going. They have a new site now. It used to be an old RAF base, but they've moved to a forest place. I played there once or twice, but haven't really played anywhere for quite a long time now.
Okay, how come?
It's running a business, man. It's
yeah. Well, I know exactly how I feel. I mean, I've got my normal job, which is a family firm, family interest. So 6 till 2 on that, and then 2 till 8 on Nemesis Tactical. So yeah, it's I completely understand. It's difficult. I mean, I managed to get away with it with the missus by saying, well, it's a work trip.
Yeah. I mean, I was dropping the kids off at 9 o'clock for school, and then a lot of days I would work till kind of midnight, 1 in the morning, and that was my week, 6-7 days a week. So yeah, not a lot of time for for playing airsoft, I did play airsoft for many years, maybe 7 or 8 years. I was playing 3 or 4 times a month. But yeah, definitely sort of burnt myself out with that level of activity. Just had to take
Yeah, I mean, I know.
a wee step back
I
and
know.
focus on the business.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. It's a very slippery slope, especially when you start to get hypercritical of your own work as well. It's difficult to walk away from a rifle build when it's not absolutely to your very specifications. You get a bit snowblind with the shimming because you're listening to the gun cycle over and over, and before you know it, it's 10 o'clock at night, and you're thinking, I should have been home an hour ago to tuck my little lad into bed.
Yep, that is it. That is it.
So, how long's the business been running then? What made you start? Got you started? Was it teching first, or was it shop first?
Oh, it was always teching first. The shop is only here so I can keep a good stock of the parts that I use for the tech work. That's it, really. Like, I don't have much interest in running a shop for the sake of running a shop. The shop is just there to support the tech work. And that's always been my love. Even when I was playing, I would only play half the game day, and the rest I'd be just fixing people's shit and just tinkering.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you do exactly what I've started to do, because obviously Nemtac's only been running for about 3 years officially. I've been teching for about 13 years, but really going at it in a more professional sense for about 3. And I started off with getting the basics in. And you think, well, I'll get some BBs in because I'm always testing rifles. And before you know it, you're doing bulk orders of this, bulk orders of that. And then you realised, oh, I've basically got a small shop here by appointment only. But it sort of it helps the cash flow, doesn't it? If nothing else.
Yeah. So I realised I didn't answer your question. I've been, I think the business has been officially running for 14 years now, 15 years. Initially as a sole trader.
While. So you've really been through from, how to describe it, it's sort of that pre-MOSFET era. It's when you were dealing with like the ASCIIs, things like that.
Oh yeah, even before that. I started off on silver wiring and capacitors to boost the old NiCad batteries.
Every little thing you can do just to increase the efficiency that little bit.
That's it.
So how long have you actually been playing airsoft then? So you had the shop for what, 14 years? You've been playing airsoft for how long? Or when did you really get introduced? It must have been what? I might have already covered this.
Maybe only a year before, to be honest.
So you really got stuck in early.
Oh yeah. It was a steep, slippery slope, that one. Yeah, it was about a year before, I think. We had that sort of it was a stag do, actually. My mate's farm. My mate's brother's farm. And after that, another mate took us to Land Warrior, and played a game there, and just, that was it. It was just addicted, full on. This is what I'm doing now. Played a few games, bought a bunch of secondhand kit, just started taking stuff apart, spending way too much money, trying to figure out how to do it.
That's how everyone starts teching. You make the expensive stakes yourself first. It's a few MOSFETs with a big scratch on them, a few this, a broken sensor here, many sets of gears there. That's where all the spares are from in people's workshops, mostly. It's always the case. You think, God, I've had that set. Like, I've got a set of SHS gears. I think they're 12-to-1s from way back in the day. Way back in the day. There's the bevel and pinion are fine. The sector gear, I don't know where that's gone. It's lost to the ether. Yeah, I know exactly how I feel. You get many different things just piling up over the years. So airsoft's really changed then, as far as the tech inside's concerned, since you started, really. What's the most prominent thing you've noticed in the past year or so that's changed in the teching world?
I mean, last year, say brushless motors on the tech side of things, we've got we've got what I would call proper brushless motors now. Not we've had decent brushless motors for quite a while, but we're starting to get genuinely high spec, really good quality brushless motors. Of a similar, things. Not quite at the same standard as
it's definitely not the same standard as say the RC market.
Yeah. But
So
we're
what's
getting close
now?
now.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to pick a side because there's a lot of people go. I use this and I use that. I personally like the T238 motors, but I'm quite open to trying any other motor if it's good. Like I quite like a Warhead motor. When they first came out, they weren't a massive thing for me because the tabs were quite weak. But they've improved over time, and there's been a few things. What's your go-to?
My go-to is whatever is best. I
Yes, the
judge
most simple
every,
thing.
or I try to judge every brand, every model on its own merits. Like I try not to get too into this brand is better than this brand because ultimately
Mhm.
all the airsoft brushless motors are made in a maximum of two
China.
factories. Probably
Yeah,
probably just the one factory, if I'm honest. Um,
yeah. Most of them
like
Solink, if I'm not
Warhead,
mistaken.
T238. Yeah. Now I don't know if Solink are the OEM or if they're just one step higher
If I
in the middle
if I'm
management.
not mistaken, Solink seemed to be one of the main distributors. If I'm not, now I might be wrong. I don't know if Warhead are made in the same factories because if you look at the motor cans, they're very different to the others out there. You can tell, especially say on the Solink motors are extremely similar to the new Spectre motors. Cough, cough. They're probably made in the same factory. Um,
Oh, they are.
T238s are also very
I've
close.
got
It's
confirmation of
obvious.
that already.
Yeah, I have. I was
Yep.
trying to be subtle about it though. Fuck. When you're trying to be subtle and you go, "Oh, well, I know." But
You don't need
no,
subtlety.
yes, this is true. But yeah, they're all much of a muchness, really. But the reason I say what's your go-to is because everything seems to be a bulk buy with most things. Is that something you found? Or do you tend to buy a motor for a job? What's your methodology when you quote for things?
Yeah, that is the eternal struggle of running a tech shop first and a regular shop second.
I think the key
Yeah,
word is cash flow.
yep. Cash flow is a constant nightmare. Um, yeah, of course, I try and buy in bulk to get the trade prices where I can. If it's not possible, like I have I have accounts with most of the major kind of UK retailers, so I'll then make maybe half the margin, but it's at least not a loss. So if I just need a
Yeah.
thing here, a thing there, I can grab it and I'm not going to be
Mhm.
supporting myself and paying my bills, but I'm not going to be losing money. So that
Yeah,
kind of
you're
keeps
you're
things
actively
where,
moving forward, not moving backwards. That's the key, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
so the one thing. Let's like I said, you're talking like £1,000 minimum spend for most bulk orders, especially T238, for instance. If you want a decent price break, the entry level is about a grand ish.
yeah,
By the time
yeah.
you've dealt with postage, import duties, that sort of thing, and then if you're doing it full time, you could probably shift most of those motors in a couple of weeks. But if you're doing it sort of part time, you're just starting a business, work isn't exactly pouring through the door, it could take you a couple of months to shift that. So the cash flow does become a problem. Now, if you were to give advice to a younger company, a start out tech who's aspiring to have his own company and do tech work, what would your advice be in regards to buying stuff? Would you start by trying to buy in bulk, get a loan, try and do that sort of thing? Obviously, it's not financial advice, but a bit of advice from the side of experience. How would you go about it if you had to start again?
Um, I mean, if I was to start again, I would spend a lot more time doing paperwork.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would. I would sit down and I mean, I wouldn't be able to do all the projections of jobs and income and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I would actually start with a business plan, and I would maybe go and look at a small loan. But
Just to get yourself started, to get your bulk buys in? Or would you go for
yeah,
something like, say, everyone knows them, say iWholesales or Nuprol, and start off with a trade account there? Because they're normally pretty easygoing for first time businesses, and get your leg up there and just do smaller orders? Or would you go in for the bulk stuff to try and get the money and set straight up with a side shop?
if you're, I would say if you're looking to set up as a tech, just a tech, then go with the smaller kind of intermediaries like Nuprol and so on. Fire Support have been quite good to me, and Land Warrior, Airsoft World, kind of the local shops in Scotland, and then obviously a little bit further down south. Great working relationships there. So yeah, that's kind of how I wish I'd started. It's definitely not how I started. I was just buying things at retail price and adding on 5% and wondering why I had no money.
Yeah, that's something when I first started, my go-to was always Bullseye Country Sport.
Oh yeah,
Way back in the day. They're a fantastic shop. When you order something, it turns up very promptly, without
yeah,
fail. If there's an issue, you can call them; they'll sort it immediately. Really handy. But I made basically no money other than the labour.
yeah.
And when you're relying on labour, especially even if you're not paying yourself, it's not necessarily enough money just to give you that leg up straight away that you need. So, what do you actually stock in the shop now then? Is it entirely components, or are you getting rifles in to sell? I'm trying to sort of let you spool out how you eventually want the shop to keep going, or is it something you want to, is there certain things you want to move away from stocking, or is it just basically parts?
The stock at the moment is basically just parts. We've got a whole bunch of trade-in rifles. So
Hmm.
we've got maybe 15 or 20 kind of second-hand guns that have been, serviced. Some of them have been quite highly upgraded. We've got a few kind of starter kits in.
You pretty much do what I do by the sound of it, is when someone says, well, I've got this, I don't know, name it, G&G M4, whatever it
Yep.
might be. Would you accept it as part X against the job? And then you go, well, yeah, I'll sell that one day. And then you stick it in the thing that goes in the pile of shame and you never get a chance to work on it.
Yep. That's exactly what we do.
And you get an immense pile of rifles that you think they're really cool rifles, but none of them have been worked on. And you probably
Yep.
sat on a good 3 or 4 grand's worth of kit at any given time, and you never have time to fix them. It's just the nature of the
I
beast.
did that for many years. I
Mhm.
think all except one um, of the secondhand guns that I've got in just now, I have worked on. They've all been serviced. I know what's in them. They've got lists. I'm a
Yep.
bit more organized these days than I used to be. I
Mhm.
was awful at organization in the early days, but that's just something that for me has come with time and age. It's definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So, what's your go-to rifle nowadays then? Because every tech, I suppose it's a bit like a builder's house, isn't it? It's never quite finished. But I imagine you've had enough time to finish. You should have, anyway. You've had enough time to finish your stuff. What's your personal rifle? What's your go-to? What's your favourite?
Um, MP5K,
Okay. What brand?
Tokyo Marui High Cycle MP5K with an absolute crap ton of work done to it, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, and it's currently running an enormous Vortex Crossfire 2 scope because why
Nice.
not?
Live the dream. What sort of internals have you got wedged in there?
So it has an airsoft mutation custom. It's like a beta testers, an alpha testers
19th
really.
DSG set, full helical set.
Yes, yep, that's the one. Yep, yep.
Yep, I have a set of those as well. They're nice chaps over
Yeah,
at
yeah,
Airsoft Geek.
yeah. Lovely.
Small world, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've got one of those in there. It's got an old Sistema bore up kit,
Hmm.
an edgy 5.98 ported in a barrel with an R-hop. And then Garda spring, Solink V5 motor currently,
Hmm.
and a few other wee bits and pieces. Oh,
Okay,
and a
very
Jeftron
cool.
Leviathan.
Yeah.
Um,
Now that's something I want to talk to you about, because obviously we both know Luke, Negative Airsoft. He's a big fan of the Perrons. I like Perrin, but he shits all over Jeftron all the time, which is fair. And I think it's very much down to experiences with those particular MOSFETs.
oh, for
I
sure.
got in.
Yeah.
I got introduced to them a couple of years ago, right when Luke fell out with them. So I have a funny feeling I came into them when they sorted said issues. When did you get introduced to the Jeftrons?
The Leviathans before they sorted all their issues. But I was lucky enough to chat to Philip, the Jeftron guy.
Yeah, Nemec. Is it Nemec?
Yeah.
I think it's looking. Yeah,
that's it. Yep. Lucky enough to just see him on a Facebook group, so I added him as a friend, and we got chatting away. So there was a long time of bug reporting and, hey, I've done this and your unit isn't quite working properly. Can you like fix this? This is definitely a software issue. The units themselves I found were great, but yeah, the software was pretty buggy in the early days. But they've largely fixed that. Still little issues here and there, but I think for the price and the feature set you get, I really like them. Definitely,
I find them
fixed.
Yeah, very competitive, and you get the nice clicky trigger if you can be asked to tune it, that sort of thing.
Just about to say that.
Yeah, it's now they have thankfully seemed to have sorted it. Have you tried the new V2s yet?
The Scillas.
No, not the Skillia, Skylar,
whatever you call
it. The tentacle one. Anyway, but the normal V2 Leviathan has a updated trigger spring mechanism. Have you seen that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've had one of those through so far.
Mm-hmm. I had the I'd say the pleasure of fitting one. It was because I expected a little bit of tuning. Sometimes you'd have to sort of soften off the top of the trigger potentially just to give it that bit of distance. It was only normally just a bit of wet and dry sandpaper over the top, quick polish, job done. But now it seems to be a lot more plug and play. It's definitely on a par with the Perrin clickers as far as installability.
I probably still prefer the Perrin clicker for the V2s, but it doesn't cost any extra and it's already there, so
that's the key.
It's a nice feature. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now the version 3, have you had your hands on one of those yet?
Oh yes. Many.
Give us your thoughts.
I mean, I love the V3 Leviathan, especially the new 2-stage trigger kind of insert.
Yes, much better than the old one. That trigger, the trigger spring before, oh my lord, it was a nightmare. I mean, don't get me wrong. I got to the stage where I knew how to fit them efficiently. When you reach that stage where you think, right, this is only going to take me 15 minutes tops to get the MOSFET installed, the trigger in nicely, get things installed as I want it. I know what's going where and how it's going to go. But for any even amateur level tech to try and fit one of those, it would have been an absolute nightmare.
Yep.
But when you did have them fit, they were a really nice sort of, how to describe it, nice feel to them.
Yeah. I did one when they first came out, and I thought, no, this is too much of a pain in the arse. I can't realistically charge my customers the amount of time this is going to take to fiddle about and get it sorted. Especially because most of them were going in the TM recoil AKs, which required a complete rewire anyway to get all the wires kind of sitting nicely. I can't really justify an extra, half hour, 45 minutes to do it in the AK gearbox. So I generally just left them. But the new ones are much better. Yeah.
So thoughts on the new gates? Have you come across any of those yet? The Asta V2 or the Titan V2?
I haven't used them, to be honest. I think Luke's experience with Jeftron is my experience with Gate.
Yes, it's very much the same for me, especially when it comes to DSG. Gate and DSG are not friends.
Yeah, or brushless motors outside of their own, kind of custom ones.
Yeah, it's. I've always found Gate as, even from the get-go, yes, they were there early. They were very early adopters of decent quality MOSFETs. They were, when the Titan came out, they were certainly, early days, one of the better ones.
Yep.
But you were sort of limited by option. Nowadays, I'd say they're a little bit behind the times. They're definitely not as competitive, especially on business-to-business trade accounts. They are terrible. Have you had have you tried to get any in bulk?
I mean, I theoretically have a trade account with them. I have done bulk orders in the past, not in a long time. I had a bunch of issues, and was basically told that they're not really doing warranty stuff anymore because it's
What?
not
Oh,
profitable for them.
you
So,
can't skim over that. Go on.
yep. I was like, well, I've got a bunch of units, a couple that were, dead on arrival, and a
Hmm.
couple that customers had goosed beyond my ability to fit. I don't have a reflow oven, so there are some things that I can't do. And they're like, yeah, we're not doing those repairs anymore because it doesn't make us any money. So yeah, you're just kind of out of luck, really. Buy new ones.
Oh, so they didn't have like a UK, what would the word be? Warranty department or anything like that. It was just a direct gate thing.
Yeah, that was that.
Oh, that's super useful. I mean, I don't know if you've been speaking to Tom Vu at Jeftron. He seems to be quite on the ball nowadays with if they have any issues, you can just ring him up. Give him a message. As soon as he sees your message, he's on top of it straight away. Is that who you liaise with, or are you still speaking directly to Philip?
Well, yeah. So the tech Discord group that I'm part of has both Tom and Philip, which is quite handy. I don't. Philip's better half got a little bit annoyed at the constant chatting away on Facebook, so she's like, "We need some time. let's have some non-work time. Let's move away from direct Facebook messages." It's like, yeah, I get that. I get that. No worries.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
I need to get on that Discord group, I think, at some point, because a lot of people there I quite like to chat to. Now,
Yeah.
that neatly leads me into your YouTube channel. What made you start the YouTube channel? Obviously, advertising and getting your name out there is going to be one of the main drivers of that. But was it more of a passion? How much time do you spend editing? That sort of thing.
I spend as little time editing as possible. Is something that I have no time or enthusiasm for. So most of my videos are just a single take, a couple of splices here and there. One of my friends has jumped in and helped do some of the more recent things, the shorts with the subtitles and the thumbnails and whatnot. But yeah, that was start. So my kind of philosophy is very open source. Like I don't believe any information, kind of in the tech world should be hidden or behind a paywall or trade secrets or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that was really the reason I started the YouTube channel, was to make sure that my knowledge is there for kind of people to benefit from.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I mean, that's something I did. That's one of the reasons I sort of started my channel. Is now, if I'm not mistaken, you might know him, the Airsoft Tech, who
Yes.
probably hasn't uploaded. I know Luke knows him. He's had his few disagreements with him in the past. Now, he was one of the main people I learnt to tech from watching his, because he had a series called Tech Tips.
Yeah.
Now, that was incredibly useful. It's very outdated now, obviously, because brushless motors on the scene. Tappet plate timing's a massive issue nowadays, especially with brushless. It's very much a different ballgame. Is that the sort of is that one of the things you took some inspiration from, or is that something that was sidelined? Have you only recently got to know the chap, or?
I don't think I've ever watched any of his videos.
It's honestly, he's one of the main driving reasons I set up a channel like I did.
Yeah.
Because I thought, he stopped uploading. There's a few other channels out there helping, but there's not many people out there aiming at very, very basic tech work. Like he has a full how to shimmy rifle build. It's nice and simple, sort of bevel to pinion, start with an M4 type thing.
Yeah.
Then how to choose the right piston for the right job. He used to do the whole Swiss cheesing thing and all sorts of bits and bobs. Back in the days when Sorbethane was like the go-to thing for correcting only. Talking that sort of era. And it's people like that that pushed airsoft teching, in my opinion anyway, the direction it's gone, where things have improved notably, and
Yep.
it's also folk like that who are happy to correct themselves. Is when you put something new up, because obviously I watch quite a bit of your stuff, but I haven't had a chance to watch the entire back catalogue. Is there any videos you've done where you've thought that's wrong in my eyes? I'm going to go back and correct that.
I actually haven't watched through most of my old videos in a very
Because
long time.
you've got quite a catalogue of videos, really. I think let me just have a look now. Your oldest video is what, 9 years old?
Something
When
like
did
that.
the sort of, is there any bits on there that you've considered, or you've had that thought in the back of your mind of, oh, I used to do it that way, but now I see that as an incorrect method of doing it? Is that something that has crossed your mind at all in any way?
I mean, certainly the kind of universal use of sorbothane.
Hmm.
That was something I did for a few years, and that's absolutely not not what I do anymore. Not what I would
Yeah.
say is the correct method. It's very much on a case by case basis now. Some
Hmm.
builds might require, a bit of angle of engagement correction. Some builds don't require any at all. Sometimes
Yeah.
the available cylinder volume is your most important factor to consider. Um, so yeah, there's definitely a few things off the top of my head, and I'm positive there will be several dozen things if I go back and look through all my old videos. I'll be like, what the fuck was I thinking?
Yes, I've done a few of those where I've looked at my video and gone, I mean, my channel's nowhere near as old as yours, but I've gone, actually, I don't like that. And I've taken the video down purely because you think to yourself, well, I just don't do that method anymore. Like you said, rightly so, is the Sorbothane thing. When I first got into the more professional side of teching, I went, well, I'll buy Sorbothane in directly from a supplier, get some sheets in, get like a leather working kit to stamp them out. Because,
Hmm.
you can get the leather punches, stamp out the Sorbothane, and it works out roughly the correct shape. And I started installing Sorbothane in a couple of my own builds, and I went, actually, no, this is causing more issues than it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use any sorbothane specifically, except for making flat nubs,
Hmm.
sort of custom cut flat nubs for um, some of the builds I do. Excuse me, but
So,
I do use a polyurethane sheet, which is
ah,
it's thinner. It's an order of magnitude more durable, so you don't
mhm,
have to cover the sorbothane with a layer of neoprene or anything like that. Just
mhm,
the polyurethane damping pads will last for hundreds of thousands of rounds of their own accord,
yeah,
and they're much thinner than the sort of sorbothane pads I was using. So they'll correct the angle of engagement by a small amount, not what you would call perfectly. It's
mhm.
not perfect, but it gives some
Just take
builds when
takes the
used.
edge off the wear. I know what you mean. It
Yeah,
corrects it enough where you
yeah,
think, right, that's more acceptable. Most
yeah.
people correct off the sort of piston to piston, piston head to piston space now, don't they? They use a little spacer there, which seems to be the go-to modern way of doing it anyway.
Yeah, the spacers are certainly more durable than sorbothane, um, and they can be easier to set up. You don't have issues with worried your glue's going to come loose or anything like that.
Hmm.
I'm not a massive fan of spacers personally. I think if you're going to lose some cylinder volume, I kind of want more benefit than just an angle of engagement correction. So
Yeah.
then that's why I would use a damping pad. So then you've also got some wear reduction and um, some noise reduction as well. But then,
Hmm.
yeah, it does have to be the right sort of material. Sorbothane is kind of too soft for a lot of modern builds. There's too much bounce, so too much inconsistency. But the polyurethane pads are working quite well where I do use them.
All right, noted. I'll have to check that out at some point because it's not something I've ever considered. If and when I need to correct AOE, especially on sort of, I tend to correct it on sort of high rate of fire build, something high
Yeah,
stress.
yeah.
I tend to just pop a spacer between the piston and piston head, one that's the appropriate size. Because one thing I've noticed a lot of techs are doing, especially the bedroom techs, they hear right, you need a washer between the piston and piston head, but the washer doesn't cover the piston rack. And I've seen a ridiculous amount of builds come across my bench where they've corrected it with even, the back edge of a piston head bearing, the steel part.
Oh, the thrust bearing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sort of bearing there. They'll use the steel part of that as a spacer, and then they wonder why the piston shat itself 1,000 rounds in because the rack's moving back and forward. And
Yeah.
but yeah, you have to use the appropriate ones for the build at the time. Now, what was your go-to source for learning then when you started teching? Was that something entirely self-taught, or was there a lot of right, I'm going to go on YouTube, see if anyone's done this, or?
I mean, there wasn't really YouTube like that when I first started teching. Kind of the YouTube tech channels came out of an old airsoft forum called Airsoft Mechanics,
Yep.
and that was kind of where I learnt, just reading through everything, every single post on Airsoft Mechanics. That was my daily routine. I'd spend 2 or 3 hours just catching up, and contributing where I could. But it was, I didn't really have a lot to say back in those days where I didn't have knowledge. So I was there to learn and to try. I did start posting a little bit more, towards the end before it got taken down, where I had some experience and I knew, okay, this is actually a useful piece of information that I can add here. But yeah, that was entirely where I learned, forums and then just trying it for myself.
Yeah. Now, moving on from the sort of the fine parts of teching, talking about components, things like that. Is there any rifles that you'll turn away? Do you have any limitations of what you're willing to take on? Have you changed your mind on a few bits over the past few years? What's your recommendations and strict no-goes?
There aren't many I'll turn away. I don't work on Daytona guns. I think they're relatively poorly designed, and they're just not worth. That it's not worth me charging money. I can't give a customer good value for money working on a Daytona gun. So I tend to,
especially over that horrifically long break-in period, where you put, say, 1,000 rounds through it, it smashes a gazillion BBs, clean the fucking thing out. Yeah, I know exactly your pain.
Yep.
I had to build a Daytona AK a couple of weeks back, and I thought, do I make that my last one? Quite possibly, because it's just not worth your time.
Yep.
By the time it's eaten through 15 different HPA bottles just to bed it in, because they're just not very efficient, to be fair. I mean, they're fun, they go clunk.
Yep.
But for what it's worth, surely you could just HPA a GBBR.
Well, that's it, really. I think if you're going to go to all that trouble of designing a custom, ground up CNC machine system, you could do it so that it doesn't need a break-in period, which would be entirely possible.
Yeah.
But that's about the only thing I'll turn away, to be honest. There've been a lot of guns where I've thought, no, this is shit. That's the last one I'm working on. And then I've immediately accepted another one in because I've had the experience. So then the next time it's not quite as shit. I mean, everything by Ares falls into that category.
Yeah. I mean, I've just seen Retro Arms have announced they're doing the Ares gearbox, and I popped a comment on there myself, and I went, for the love of God, make it so it takes a normal MOSFET. What's wrong with you?
I said that the last time they did one. Why would you?
It's the most pointless upgrade I've ever seen in my fucking life. Because, yes, the gearbox is shit and they might crack, fair enough, but you're not going to replace it with another shit gearbox that takes a shit MOSFET, pardon my French, but make it so it can take any other MOSFET. Just a standard V2 that happens to drop in an Ares, and make it so people can actually run a Honey Badger without feeling like a complete dick once they've just spent 300 quid on parts because it keeps burning out and setting on fire. but that's Aries for you.
You can fix the MOSFETs.
Go on, I'm listening.
So they don't have like a flyback diode on them to
Right.
protect the MOSFET from the kind of coil discharge, the back EMF when a motor stops. So if you chuck a little diode on there, that helps a lot. And if you design the build where it's not going to have a massive back EMF dump, so you would want a more balanced sort of motor and gear ratio, then those are things you can kind of do to help prevent the Aries MOSFETs from burning out.
Yeah, you're talking
But
like a life extension for them more than a look. It can now do brushless.
oh yeah, no, they're not designed for brushless at all. Like
No, I mean this is the biggest problem I have with Aries. They make some really fucking cool guns. Say,
yep,
I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but the Aries RDB is a good example. It's certainly different. No one else is doing one, but you're stuck with the Aries MOSFET unless you're willing to spend countless hours making something else work. Like I think there's that parent system like Luke has where there's all the different selectors and the little buttons you can manually put in.
yep.
And you think, is it really worth it for a gun that's sort of 300 quid?
I mean, that's the issue with Aries. They do so much unique stuff. If you want that gun, they're your only option. And I have a bunch of Aries guns for that very reason. And they're all, I strip the Aries out and put good stuff in.
Yeah, just keep the Aries externals. It's like the VZ58 for me. That's one of the ones that I'd really like.
Yep.
Every time I see one come up second hand, I have to remind myself that's going to be a pain in the arse. That's going to be more time than it's worth.
That's it.
It's just a hard and fast no. The only exception I'd make nowadays myself, if Aries magically brought out an SKS, even if it had their janky ass MOSFET system, I would commit to something like that. So, other than Aries, what else is sort of like a pet peeve of yours at the moment?
Oh, I'm gonna say self-tapping screws.
In what horror shows have you seen?
Oh, everything. I mean, I love Tokyo-Marui, but it is my biggest pet peeve is self-tapping screws. Like, just tap a machine thread. Use a proper screw.
Well, everything's made out of the finest, as I think Luke said in one of the podcasts. It's the finest Japanesium, isn't it?
Yep.
It's not exactly high quality aluminium. This is the biggest issue I have with TM. I get quite a few people saying, "Can you do TM?" And I go, "Yeah, I can happily do them, but it's going to cost you a fortune in parts." Because it's that sort of cascading effect of the minute you go above what they're built to handle, i.e., 1 joule, you start to get a failure in the bushings and in the piston, and then even the sector gear, the release tooth, starts to just disappear magically. The whole thing's just built for 1 joule, nothing more. And it's got to the stage where I've started to go, I don't understand the hype.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I understand the hype as well. They're cool systems. I temper that with the knowledge that they're not meant to be sold at the price point that they kind of sit at in the UK. That's just a side effect of
imports, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you've got they don't export, so you have the wholesaler buys from Tokyo-Marui, they sell to a Japanese shop, the Japanese shop sells to a UK shop, so you've got two levels of shipping and profit margins and everything. So they end up costing about double what they should.
Yeah, they should be more around the price point of a Cyma, really.
Yeah,
especially with the components they have in them. I mean, that's an interesting take I've never really thought about, is they're built for the price point of a Cyma, but they're just simply not because of the nature of getting them in the UK. So that's quite an interesting take, really. What about pistols? Here's what I have is AAPs, a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, I get that. They're pretty crap out the box. You can make them awesome, but you're spending an absolute crap ton of money. So
yeah, by the time you've done it, just about ranges the same as an AEG, and you think, could have done that for a lot less.
Yeah, I like the. I honestly like the platform. I don't like how much you have to spend to make it good,
Hmm.
but I do like the end result. And if you're gonna spend that much on a pistol, you'd get honestly, you'd get the same end result whatever you started with.
Yeah.
If you're doing the whole aluminium machined slide and frame and all the custom stuff, um, it doesn't really matter where you start. The end result is going to be much the same. So
Hmm.
if you like the physical format of the AAP and that's your goal, then awesome. But I certainly wouldn't buy one and use it out the box as a sidearm.
No, I mean I've had my hands on a couple of quite a few AAPs now to work on and fix because they're always fucking broken. But the bit of advice I seem to be giving out recently is if you're going to buy an AAP, leave it stock or hot rubber, maybe barrel. If you're feeling a bit bougie, maybe a hop unit, maybe, just to make it easy to adjust. But yeah, for the most part, don't run them on HPA. they seem to just melt as soon as you run them through HPA. All the components seem to just obliterate themselves, like the old school G&Gs with the self-lubricating brass bushings.
Phosphor bronze, yeah, 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 yeah.
You'd open the gearbox, there'd just be gold dust everywhere.
Yeah. I actually went to get some custom bushings made um, at a local company in Dundee.
Hmm.
I said, what should I make these out? What's your best kind of material? And he's like, oh, you want phosphor bronze? And I didn't have a clue at the time. And I was like, okay, so what's the benefit of phosphor bronze? He said, well, it's self-lubricating. I was like, doesn't that just mean it'll wear out? It's like, yeah, but then you get to charge more money putting new ones in. It's like, no, that's not what I want
That's
at all.
that's that's, that's the opposite
That's
of
the
what I
opposite.
want. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm replacing. That's what
Yes.
I'm taking out. I'm not going to charge money to put the same thing back in.
Let's replace a problem for a fresh problem with a
Yeah,
different name.
exactly. Yeah,
But these ones are custom.
a branded problem.
Yeah. Now it's a warranty issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Especially when you're first teching, trying to find the right component for the job has always been an interesting go-to. I've quite found the ASG, what are they called now? They have them in the Evos, the ASG bushings. I find them incredibly decent bushings. They just seem to be a go-to for me at the moment.
Oh, yep. I know the ones. Yeah, they're
The 8 mil, I
sintered
can't
steel.
remember,
Yeah,
graphite bushings. They seem to be the go-tos at the moment for the price point, how
yeah,
long they last, the noise produced. They're not too bad at all.
yeah.
Now, now your favourite AGs on the market, what are they?
Oh, I don't know. I
One
mean,
for me at the moment, which I think is one to watch, especially for price, is definitely the Spectre Arms, the Prime. The pre-brushless ones. I mean, I know the shimming isn't perfect, and
hmm
there's a bit of work to be done, but price for entry, that's not a bad base build for what you get.
yeah, I would agree with that.
Have you got any suggestions? Say if someone was listening to this, thinking, "I want to get my first gun, maybe tech on it." You've got, either a low budget or a high budget. What would you recommend?
Oh, I wouldn't even know these days.
Is it just one of those you get them across the bench and go, "Yeah, I'll fix this." There's no. So do you not get any questions in the realm of I'm after a reliable, say M4, keep it generic. I'm after a reliable M4. What would you recommend?
I used to get a lot of questions like that. I think, I mean, I deliberately started kind of marketing and moving on to more specialized work that kind of holds my interest a little bit more.
Hmm.
Working on the really stupid Ares guns and the hard stuff, and taking in
You wanted the challenge.
yeah, exactly. The stuff that no one else is going to touch. Like
Hmm.
that's kind of where I want to be. So I don't really get so many questions these days about oh, where should I start? I was like, just pick a budget, pick a platform, buy a gun.
I mean, my normal advice
Set your
is grab something secondhand you like the look of.
yeah,
Do a little bit of surface level research to make sure it's got aftermarket compatibility for most things, and go from there. Um,
yep,
but I always like to ask these questions because you never know who's going to listen to this thing and try and pick up tidbits of information as advice, and especially from the tech community. That's where people who really do the research are going to go to for advice. Let's be honest. That's sort
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
seems to be the go-to. Now, one thing you mentioned is you haven't been for airsofting for a while. So where are you going next, and when is it?
Yeah, so I haven't played in 4 or 5 years at least. I did a big
Christ, I thought you
workshop.
meant it was just a month, not 4 or 5
Oh no,
years.
no! It's been a while. No, we did a big workshop move. So we moved to the place that we're currently in. So my last workshop was, it was decently sized. It was maybe 15 meters by 10 meters. That kind of
Mhm.
size. And we're now, what are we, 50 meters by 30 meters? So we're pretty huge up here now.
Yep.
And yeah, just doing that workshop move and that kind of took a lot out of me. And it's still ongoing. We're still working on this place, setting up a tabletop gaming arena.
Ah, yes, a fellow nerd.
Yeah,
Okay, let's get stuck into the shit then. Before, obviously, we'll come back to the airsoft thing.
yeah.
What is your thing? Is it 40K? I'm guessing.
Um, no, but that's only because I don't have any time left. So
Reasonable.
I love 40k, but I have had to forcibly, stop myself from getting into it.
Hmm.
Um, but the other guys here, they all play 40k. My business partner AJ, he's running the tabletop side of things.
Yep.
So we have like a D&D room that's set up for live streaming as well.
Hmm.
Um, and then we've currently got space for 15 full-size Warhammer tables. Um,
Sweet. I
and
mean,
then
I assume you've got like a 3D printing setup and resin printers all running. Then you normally do if it's
Yep,
that sort of size.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So I've got the 3D printer, the filament printer, kind of behind me in my office here.
Hmm.
Then we've got 3 resin printers, and then a bunch of other filament printers that we haven't set up yet because we've not really needed them.
Yeah, I found that I went a bit over the top with printers at one stage, and now I have
Yeah.
far too many, and I tend to run one
Yep.
consistently, which is just
That's
the
it.
easiest one. It's not a case of which one's better, which one's more convenient. Like I've, if I had the money as far as an FDM sort of filament printer, I'd go Bamboo Labs. But at the minute, we've just sort of got a K1, the
Yep.
Creality K1.
Yep.
I've been fortunate enough that someone's essentially given it to me on permanent loan, a friend of mine, because he just never has time to do anything. So yeah, that's constantly going in the background. That's why I have to record very specific times, because if not, all you can hear is that
Yep.
motoring away. We do
I had to
have,
time my print to stop before the call today.
yeah, it's I have. Oh, you shouldn't have bothered pausing. You should have told me to wait. There's always a print line when you pause
Yeah.
it. Yeah, and I sort of went, you know what, this is really quite good. I started off with an Ender 3,
Mhm.
but the K1, it was just sort of, transfer it across from not the Bamboo Labs, uh, I can't remember the slicer software I use now off the top of my head. It's because I've not had enough sleep today, apparently. But, you can just drag and drop it across, it'll start printing, and
Yeah.
it'll let you know on the app when you've done. Wonderful, happy days. But then I've still got an Ender 3 in a case, all nicely ready to go. That prints
Yep.
occasionally. And I've got 4 others that I've just got, because someone will say, oh, I've got one of these going cheap. And you go, well, it'd be a shame not to get it. And then it sits
That's
there.
exactly what happened here.
So you end up with a stack of those. And then I've got 2 resin printers. I've got a couple
Yep.
of Elegoo's, the big one, and
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
slightly smaller one, which have been
Yep.
fantastic in the
That's
wash-off
exactly what
station.
we've got as well for the resin side.
Hmm.
Yeah, the
See,
FDM is a Prusa Mark III with
hmm,
a whole bunch of upgrades.
yeah. I mean, I went down the upgrade route with the Ender 3, and I thought, well, I've been given this K1. It's pretty much, I know it's not necessarily the finest detail on earth, but it's
Mhm.
damn near good. Um, and so far, so good, really, for the speed they run at as well.
Yeah.
Um, how's your experience been with the Prusa thing?
I mean, I love it. I've had kind of fantastic experience with it. A few little issues here and there, mostly to do with ambient temperature.
Hmm.
But once I got a case around it, I like I've had 3 4 day prints, and I can just set it to go, and I'll come back 3 or 4 days later, and it'll be finished, and it'll be perfect.
That's what you
It's
want.
yeah.
What sort of thing are you running off on there? I assume it's not all airsoft bits. Some of it's going to be sort of terrain, I imagine. That's normally the
Yeah,
go-to.
yeah. We do a lot of terrain. Although most of the terrain, like most of the big terrain, so we do little kind of modular wall segments and things for like the Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings games.
Yeah, yeah.
Most of the terrain for the Warhammer side is done on the laser cutter. So we've got quite a big A2 bed laser cutter up here.
Mhm.
Um, so that's the kind of the main um,
The
the
bread
main
and
sort
butter.
of shop. Yeah, the bread and butter. Yeah,
Mhm.
of the tabletop side is making the terrain sets, and the combat gauges and the rulers and markers and tokens and things.
Yeah. So I heard you mention D&D. Are you more on the D&D gaming aside from the Warhammer stuff? Is that what your go-to is, if you get time?
Yeah, I haven't played D&D for a while. It kind of I had a few games going pre-COVID, and then since then they've all sort of petered out, and I haven't had a chance to start that up again.
Mhm.
Um, no, my sort of main nerdy side hobby is my computers, like PC gaming is.
Oh, yeah. What sort of games are you playing?
Um, So at the moment, I'm playing The Binding of Isaac and Stellaris and a little bit of Cyberpunk.
I tried to get onto Cyberpunk because obviously I'm a bit of an old school gamer as well. I started off my sort of go-to games as Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl.
Oh yeah,
Um, Personal favorite of mine. That's why I run a Val. That was the main inspiration for me getting that sort of kit.
yep,
Um, Escape from Tarkov, those sorts of games, and obviously the Elder Scrolls games used to be a big one for me. Recently, not so much. So is that's your downtime, sort of chill out time? Then when you're not teching, you're trying to switch off. You go into gaming.
yeah. That's it. Not that I get a massive chance to do that.
No, I
Um,
mean you've got kids. I've got an 8-year-old upstairs. He's
yep,
probably waiting. We'll have to end the podcast soon because I've got to get him his tea. But
yep,
it's yeah. You find when you've got kids, I've found the most useful thing for me is a pickup game. Like Tarkov's a prime example of what I'd call a pickup game because it's
mm,
you can jump in a raid for 20 minutes, and after 20 minutes you can go, right, that's me for the week. That's that
yep,
put to one side. But it's nice and simple. It's the same thing every time. It's fun.
yep.
What's
I mean
your
that's Binding of Isaac for me.
hmm I'm not too familiar with that game. Go on.
It's um it's a roguelike.
Hmm.
So it's sort of hard as nails. You die, that's it. You start over. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. So it's like a top-down sort of dungeon crawler,
Oh yeah.
mob bullet hell sort of game, with a really kind of dark sense of humor behind it. It's the same guy that did Super Meat Boy, if you're kind of familiar with
I
that.
missed out on that because wasn't that
Uh,
over the sort of COVID esque time slot,
uh,
or was it just before that? It's been a while now.
no, that was well, the first Super Meat Boy was maybe 7 or 8 years before COVID.
Oh shit! Fucking hell. I've been gaming a while, but I just remember at the time there was something big going on, and I can't remember what it was, and I just
Yeah.
got distracted. And, when especially when other games come out on top of another game that you think about playing, and you just
Oh
miss
man.
that
Yep.
game by
Yep.
chance.
Yep.
I
All the
I
time.
had that when Subnautica 1 came out, and I really wanted to play it, but there was
Yep.
I think it was I was big into Skyrim or something
Yeah.
else at the time, and I missed it, and then I started playing it the other day and thought, "God, I missed out properly on this game a few
Yep.
years ago before I had responsibilities." And, um, yeah, it's gaming is a good way I found to switch off, especially from teching. It's something especially with airsoft tech work, you can really go down a rabbit hole of constant self-improvement and research where it especially for me, it's something that I constantly think about.
Yep.
Especially if you've got a gun you're halfway through finishing, and say it's been vexing in some way, like it's not behaving the way it normally does with shimming, bevel to pinion's not right, you need to change the bevel. You go to bed because you think, right, that's it for the day, I'll come back to it tomorrow. But then your brain goes, maybe you didn't try the right gear. And then it starts. And I found gaming's a good way to switch off from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, let's not dwindle too long because I've got to cook my little lad tea, and I'm painfully aware it's getting late for you as well.
Yep.
Do you fancy doing another one at some point?
Yeah, for sure.
Now, one thing I wanted to do, because I've noticed there's an incredible lack of it on especially YouTube, is yes, there is Airsoft podcasts. Like we've got obviously Nemtech, the Nemcast, and we've also got Nemcast After Hours. But my thing is tech work. That's what I do.
Yep.
And I like to speak to other techs. Obviously, it's a very niche subject, but there's no tech podcasts. And I was wondering at some point in the future if you, Neg, and maybe even if we can get a hold of one of the US lads or something like that, and we have just a super autistic 1 hour of teching talk. Just, everyone get a bottle of beer, sit down and just shoot the shit.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We'll have to get something planned then. So, yeah, that being that, where can people find you?
Facebook is probably the best place to get me.
So if you're wanting to reach out to Sam, then I assume Facebook Messenger is the go-to. If someone needs any tech work, is it just get hold of you via email or?
Yeah, honestly, the contact form on the website, that kind of comes up as priority on my inbox, which I just have, in front of my face the entire day. So yeah, just ping me a message through the website or email directly. And,
there we go.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Oh, awesome stuff. So like I said before, don't forget, go and check out Kingdom of Airsoft YouTube channel. Reach out to Sam if you need any tech work, especially if you're up in Scotland in the middle of fucking nowhere. And if you can find internet to actually message him. So, yeah, and that being that, thank you for coming on, Sam. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. And we'll definitely have to sort another one. Right. Also, I'll get in trouble if I don't say it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that goodness. And I'll speak to everyone soon. Cheers, chaps.